You're listening to The Seed, brought to you by Staley Credit Union and the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James.
Welcome to Behind the Scenes with The Seed. I'm actually the producer of the podcast, Laura Richter, and I'm going to be sitting in for the next two episodes, coming out from behind the camera in place of Julie Staley, our CEO at Spencer Films, and Laura Yar, the director of the Staley Museum. Our podcast has been running now for 6 months. So we wanted to do something a little bit different and provide you with a producer's insight into the program. The Seed was created as the companion podcast to the upcoming Staley Films documentary, Fields of Gold, the A.E. Staley story. Julie provides some insight into the objective of our podcast during our very first broadcast with co host Laura Yar.
Our goal here is to be a companion, kind of to give people an idea of what to expect for our documentary, Fields of Gold. Spencer Films is producing this documentary coming up. Hopefully, we can announce something very, very soon. We're working on distribution, and we hope that we can make an announcement very, very soon. We are in post-production, so we're getting very close to being finished with it. But we want to be able to tell the stories of A.E. Staley, of the A.E. Staley Manufacturing Company, and tell you about how we put together the film, give you the inside details about how we put this film together, about the stories that are surrounding the film, and even the stories that we were not able to include in this documentary because you just cannot tell everything. There just is not time. And there are so many, many things that we really wanted to include, but we could not because of time constraints. So we hope that we can share those stories here, and people can get a little bit more information about the film and the history of A.E. Staley and the A.E. Staley Manufacturing Company.
When Julie first presented the idea of developing a companion podcast for the documentary, asking me to produce it, I agreed without hesitation. But before we launched that first podcast, she and I both did our research. We talked to various friends that have hosted their own successful podcast, and we discussed the ideas with companions and associates. It was no surprise that we received overwhelming support. So we decided to move forward with the podcast. But I think the biggest challenge was probably coming up with a title for the seed. Julie and I actually spent weeks going back and forth with different ideas, but it seemed like we kept coming back to her original idea of calling the podcast The Seed. I mean, it just made sense. And it seemed that idea was validated in episode 9 when Julie Staley discussed A.E. Staley's inspiration as a child with guest Reverend Randy Garner, the great nephew of Mr. Staley.
It really did start in a lot of ways from what he had in his heart. And I know that his father, he really, of course, he was the oldest. So his father wanted him to be a minister, and that didn't seem like it was going down the road that he wanted. Although, he went to church. They took him to church camp. The whole family went. This was where he actually found out about the soybean. That was where literally and figuratively the seed was planted. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that experience was.
Again, what I know, the hearsay and the stories that are passed on through generations is there's a church still there today. It's Shiloh United Methodist today. Back in those days, it was Shiloh Methodist Church. And that was where the family went. And even on my mother's side of the family, that's where they went to church as well. And growing up there, but they had what we would call maybe a revival or a church camp or something of that nature. But there was a missionary that came from China and brought soybeans here. So the story goes that at that time, that was when soybeans were actually introduced here in our states, but in North Carolina. And soybean is a huge product in North Carolina, and it is in many other places, but there especially because it got its roots, so to say. It started that A.E. went home, maybe with his father, but had a pocket full of soybeans. And so the story goes, planted those soybeans and they took root. And the soybean product that we know today, many of us really do need to thank A.E. Staley Manufacturing.
And so the seed was planted, not only for the Staley manufacturing empire, but also for our podcast. This is our logo, and I absolutely love it. It was designed by our illustrator, Sarah Winchell at Blue Heron Graphics. As the podcast producer, I am thrilled with the support that we have received from our local community. Buick Real Estate and Staley Credit Union immediately came on as sponsors for the podcast. In fact, Jim Slade, Staley Credit Union chairman of the board and former employee of Staley Manufacturing, was our guest on episode 4.
The Fellowship Club was established in 1919, and what evolved out of that was eventually employees were able to get loans through the Fellowship Club, which led into the fact that the credit union concept itself began around 1849 in Germany. It was introduced into the U.S. in 1909, and in 1930, in June of 1930, the credit union was created by 25 original members. They were Mr. Staley's executives, and they each put in $5. No, $25, sorry. And so the credit union then was chartered by the state the next month in July. And they have gone on now for many, many years. 92 years it will be in June of this year. And still very successful in terms of taking care of the needs of employees of A.E. Staley Manufacturing Company, but also years ago they opened it up to the public in Macon County, Moultrie, Piatt, DeWitt, and Shelby. Actually, in the last couple of years, we've opened that up as well to a corridor that goes all the way into Indiana.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's fantastic. Just what A.E. Staley would have wanted is to have more people to have access to this kind of an institution. As you said, you're so right. He treated everyone as family. His employees were his family, and he wanted to give everyone an opportunity to be able to have a good life, to be able to have a good paycheck, a job that they had a lot of pride in, to work at a company that they had a lot of pride in. He worked to help provide homes that were built in the area, nice homes for his families to live in. And then they would put pictures of their beautiful houses in the Staley Journal. So it was really neat to page through that and to see people in front of their houses and that he had helped along the way. And so this was another step in that. Part of the history that you have is you always talk about what if you owned your own bank, and if you join Staley Credit Union that you will, and when you're a credit union member that profits come back to you, not your investors. And when you ask how, well, you think lower interest rates on loans, higher dividends on savings, financial education, and unmatched member service. And by becoming a member, you just have to visit StaleyCU.com. This institution is not federally insured by Member Choice. It is proudly insured by American Share Insurance.
Jim Wilkerson and Tim Buick of Buick Real Estate joined us for episode 5, where they not only talked about the strides that their company is making in preserving the history of Decatur, Illinois, but they also discuss their personal ties to Staley Manufacturing.
And I think Jim and Tim have a connection to Staley as well. Don't you both? Tim, didn't you used to work at Staley?
I did before, way before Buick Real Estate, way before I got into real estate. I was an employee at Staley's. It's been
what area did you work in?
I actually hired into the plant and on the union side. And then I was offered a company job. I waited till my probation period was over, and I took worked in the syrup refinery, 5 and 10 buildings.
Wow.
Great view from the top of 5 and 10.
Wow. How cool is that? And did you hire, when you say you hired in on the union side, was the extra board going on when you were you at all involved with the extra board?
I don't believe so. I don't
No,
remember that.
if you hired in with union, you probably weren't. So I was just curious because a lot of people come and talk to me about the extra board, and I'm actually trying to get more information. The extra board was actually kind of a portal or doorway into getting a full-time job at Staley, and a lot of people seem to have utilized that doorway to get into a full-time position. I just wondered if maybe you were one of them, but. And
I was
what?
not, I was right as the Staley's was being bought by Tate and Lyle. It was right.
Okay.
I do remember I was given a book whenever I started. It was something in the bean, or there was a
Colonel
book.
and
Colonel and the Bean.
Yes,
by
yeah.
Dan Forrestal.
I tried to find that. I know I still have it. With our move, I'm still boxed up a little bit here, but I know I've still got that book.
In April, the Brechnix Group of Raymond James joined us as a sponsor of the seed.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of people, generations of families that have worked at the company, so much experience that's there. And there's another company in Decatur that has more than 250 years of combined experience, the Brechnitz Group of Raymond James. You'll find the team of professionals there offering steadfast guidance for families, individuals, businesses, and institutional investors. And their powerhouse of experience is supported by the award-winning resources of Raymond James. And that's one of the largest independent financial service firms in the country. So for more information on them, you can visit thebrecknitzgroup.com. That's THE Brechnitz is BRECHNITZ group.com. Brechnitz Group of Raymond James, a financial future backed by strength and stability and so much experience.
We certainly appreciate the support of these companies and everyone who has tuned in for these first 6 months of the seed. We also want to thank our partners, the Herald and Review, First Mid Insurance Group, and McGuire, Uhas, Huffman, and Buckley. It certainly has been a lot of fun having you here in the production studio of The Seed. Be sure to tune in for our next episode on Tuesday, August 16th, when I'll be presenting Sprouting the Seed. We're going to continue our 6-month celebration by taking a look at some of our past guests and highlighting those interviews. Again, thank you. I'm Laura Richter.